Solicitor General Jose Calida says nothing, not the Supreme Court nor the Constitution, can stop President Rodrigo Duterte and Congress from further extending martial law. Calida, in his memorandum sent to the SC Wednesday, says further extensions are possible for as long as the Congress believes that the invasion or rebellion continues to exist and the public safety requires it. He says, quote, "The court cannot, in the absence of any express or implied prohibition in the 1987 Constitution, prevent the Congress from granting further extensions of the proclamation or suspension." This is what the House Minority Bloc warned against. In their petition seeking to nullify the re-extension of martial law in Mindanao until the end of 2018, the lawmakers said the Philippines was heading towards a martial law in perpetuity. Presidential spokesperson Roque earlier said there's nothing to fear because the Constitution does not allow perpetual martial law, but Calida doesn't share the same opinion. He says, quote, "The period for which the Congress can extend the proclamation of martial law and suspension of the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus is a matter that the august body can itself define, unshackled by any predetermined length of time, contrary to the petitioner's erroneous submission." Calida also insists in his memorandum that extending martial law is not within the SC's power of judicial review. But in the same memorandum, he contradicts himself by saying one of the constitutional safeguards against abuse of the executive is that the SC can always step in. The Solicitor General says, quote, "The extension is subject to judicial scrutiny upon the exercise of any citizen of his or her right to question the sufficiency of its factual basis, as exemplified by the very action now before this honorable court." Presidential spokesman Roque on Thursday says he never meant to say Filipinos can't conduct research on their own in Benham Rise. This after Roque's earlier remarks caused outrage from international law experts and scientists. Advocates of Science and Technology for the People, or AGHAM, says Roque's claim was unfounded because Filipino scientists were the first to explore Benham Bank, with most of the research funded by the government and some of them done in collaboration with foreign institutions. Roque in a statement asked the public to understand the entirety of his remarks on Benham Rise. He says, quote, "I was referring to China when I said no one has applied and no one can do it, because apparently it's capital intensive." Roque adds, quote, "I never said that Filipinos cannot conduct research in Benham Rise." Roque was responding to a question specifically about whether or not Filipinos could conduct research in Benham Rise on their own.
Bakit daw po kailangan China pa yung mag-conduct ng research?
Because
Bakit
only China has qualified so far. There are other applicants, unfortunately, they did not qualify according to fixed guidelines already set by the government.
Bakit daw po hindi Filipinos on their own?
Because no one has applied and no one can do it because apparently it's capital intensive. You do not need a permit for any Filipino corporation to conduct scientific investigation in Benham Rise because it is ours. So that's not something that a consent has to be given to by the government. No?
Pope Francis on Wednesday warns against the temptation of fake news, drawing a parallel between ethically compromised journalism and the biblical tale of Adam, Eve, the snake, and the forbidden fruit. In his annual World Communication Day message held on the feast day of Francis de Sales, the patron saint of journalists, the Pope refers to Eve being fooled by the snake as the first fake news. Pope Francis says, quote, "We need to unmask what could be called the snake tactics used by those who disguise themselves in order to strike." The Pope uses the story of Adam and Eve from the Old Testament's book of Genesis to highlight that, quote, "There is no such thing as harmless disinformation. On the contrary, trusting in falsehood can have dire consequences. Even a seemingly slight distortion of the truth can have dangerous effects." Pope Francis also says journalism is not just a job but a mission, and journalists as protectors of news who should promote a journalism of peace.